right, welcome to another episode of the LogiCast. My name is BlankaKong, and I'm joined by Mr. Esoteric Skills and Gunner Eos. And you guessed it, we're doing another tier list episode. And this
Hey,
time, we're doing
Let's
it
go.
on the Shadow of the Colossus Colossi boss battles. Um, the tier list that I've seen on this website before didn't really have like a good representation, so I had to kind of like drum up something. So hopefully this is like clear enough for everybody. I think it is, but I guess we'll see. We also did have to rewatch like a speed through walkthrough of all the boss fights just to kind of refresh our memories on each individual boss. Um, the parameters of the tier list are pretty much the same as the others, so we're gonna rate it off of its aesthetics, the dynamics of the fight, and level of enjoy and just general enjoyment of said battle. So, do you guys feel ready to do this? We're gonna start from like Colossi 1 to 16.
yeah, I'm good to go.
Yep.
All right. So first up is Valis. I think he's a good starting point. I think it's a really strong fight. Um, Good introduction to like just the general mechanics, but challenging enough to where for first time players, like you're gonna struggle with this a little bit to understand like what you're supposed to do. But it's a very good tutorial. But in itself, I think it's a really strong boss. I don't think it's a bad like a C tier boss. I don't think it's a bad boss, even if you know what you're doing. I think it's still respectable, like a respectable fight. I think his aesthetics fit perfectly, and it's a good starting point for like the rest of the game. I think this Colossi is pretty damn close to perfect. Um, in my opinion, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much summed it up. He's the perfect B tier monster. He's not bad. He's not horrible. He, like you said, he's a good introduction to the basics of the game, using your horse, climbing the colossi, finding the weak zones to stab. We'll see later on. A lot of the colossi have specific gimmicks and mechanics that you have to exploit. Valis, which side note for me, I didn't know these guys had names. So thank you, Kong, for like doing the extra research and finding these guys' names, because I was just like big colossi, dog colossi, snake colossi.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Valis, he's a good intro, right? If you can if you're gonna have trouble with Valis, that's a clear indication that you're gonna have trouble with the rest of the game. Um, but he's a good start. It's a good solid introduction to let you know what the fuck you're getting into with this game. So yeah, definitely agree with B. He's good B.
Yeah, I
Esoteric?
can I can definitely agree with that as well. Either like B or very low A tier. If I had to equate it to like maybe a fighting game in comparison, he's like Ryu in Street Fighter, where he's very standard. He's the introductory character that a lot of people have to learn and get used to, like the overall mechanics of the game. Um and this is done with reason, right? Because a lot of his stuff is attributed as plain because the other colossi excels in other parameters, whether it's the terrain, their anatomy, so on and so forth. So yeah, he's a nice, as you guys both stated, he's a nice introduction to the game. So yeah, I see him either very high B or a very low low A. Thinking of Street Fighter A.
I thought
Yeah.
about putting him in A, but I think there are some other candidates that I think etch him out. So I think by
Yeah,
that kind of puts him in de
agreed.
facto B. There's also a statue of him that I'm thinking about getting. I'm eyeballing this eBay listing of it. They made statues of him and of the third Colossi, and I'll show you guys the statue later. And I'll leave a link in the description for those who are interested in looking at it or maybe even buying it. It's a really gorgeous statue, and it like really captures like just the overall Shadow Colossus aesthetic, which I've always been a fan of since the game came out in 2005. Which, oh my god, almost 20 years ago.
Really?
Jesus
Mm,
Christ!
05? I thought it was earlier than that. We were
It's
in
either
college when
'05
it
or
came out.
'06, or actually no, I think it was earlier.
I think it's earlier than that. I think we was in high school when this
Oh
came
no no
out.
yeah, '05 '05. Pretty sure
Really?
'05 '06 because we graduated high school in 2006. Started
Oh, that's
college
right.
in '07. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Damn.
'05 or '06, one of those years. So nearly 20 years ago. It's about 17, 18 years ago that this game came out. So classic.
Yep.
If you haven't played it, definitely try it. So
October 18th to be exact. '05. Yeah.
'05. Okay, I was very close. All right. Quadratus, Colossi number 2. I'm gonna put him in C tier. This Colossi, I think, was good for its own reasons. It's the first like quad Colossi, hence the name, I guess. And you have to shoot the bottom of his hooves to get him to like collapse so that you can climb him.
Yeah.
To get to his back and to the top of his head. He didn't really have gimmicks besides that. I think this boss was great because he was the first one to show you like, hey, like not every colossi is going to have like these obvious platforms for you to climb. There are going to be alternative solutions to climb these creatures, and so he was the introduction to that. So he doesn't go to D tier for that reason, but other than that, this fight isn't necessarily better than the first one. I think it's kind of a step back, but I think from a game design perspective, it was designed really to teach you, hey, there are different ways to take these things down, and you have to like explore those options. So, what do you guys think?
I
Go ahead,
think.
Esoteric. I'll go after.
Okay, my bad.
No. Go for it.
I think Quadratus was also kind of sort of an introductory colossi as well, simply because the game was pretty much foreshadowing that not all colossi will be biped. So the first one was, two-legged, walking upright. This one was the first quad,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he was an introduction to that because as as you move on with the game, that's pretty much what you essentially get, either 2 foot, 4 foot for the most part. There are some exceptions to the rule, which we will discuss in the future. But yeah, I would say C or B as well, simply because again, he's an introductory colossi, in my opinion. As Kong stated eloquently enough, that there's going to be certain marks that you'd have to look for in in places that are not as revealing as the first one. And if I'm not mistaken, he also has a little bit of terrain interaction that you had to do with him as well. I think he was the one where you had to like stand on a hill or something when you first seen him or whatever, or maybe I'm mistaking him for another one. Um,
So you
but
fight him underneath the one of the. There's like a second broken bridge
mhm.
inside the hidden lands, and he's like underneath there, like he's like below that. And I think it's pretty flat land from my memory, but my memory is a little fuzzy. I haven't played this game in a few years, so.
Yeah, I have the memory of a goldfish because I actually, fun fact, for those of you who are watching, I played this rather late. I think the first time I played it, I actually streamed it either last year or the year before, from the time that this was filmed. So yeah, goldfish memory. But overall, from what I do recollect, he definitely was a start Colossi, the first quadped Colossi you face, and he was also introductory as well. He didn't have anything that was too over the top. Um, he was fairly normal, so I can see him being placed in C or low B.
So yeah, think Esoteric pretty much kind of like nailed it. I think this is another introductory monster to the fact that there are quadruped type colossi of varying, you know, toolkits. But this again was like kind of a basic one that showed that they come in all shapes and sizes, and that this one was a step above Valis because the placements weren't obvious. You had to kind of like look differently for it. So based on that, I would kind of put him on B as like a starting point. Like again, he's not a bad monster, but if we're gonna say Valis is B because he's the first Colossi and kind of an introduction to the overall game, I think Quad Quadrus,
Quadratus?
uh, Quadratus,
Quadratus,
Quad,
yeah.
Yeah.
Weird
yeah,
name.
old boy Quad. Um, I think he should, in my opinion, I think he should be with Valis because he's the introductory fight to the quadruped enemies that you'll encounter in the rest of the game. So that
Okay.
like jive with y'all? Not really.
I can concede that. I think that's a fair point. I think I'm comparing them directly, but I think you convinced me in that they should be at least leveled. I would put Valis ahead of him because I
Yes,
think this is
yeah,
a better
yeah.
fight. But
yeah.
I can concede that he's a low B. I can live with that. So moving forward, Gaius is the next monster or the next colossi, and I think this is our first S tier. Maybe this is a controversial pick. I don't know. But you fight this guy. He has his own arena in the middle of a lake. Above the lake is like a circular, just it's arena, right? It's just this giant mass of land. And he's waiting for you up there, and you have to like go into the water and you have to like climb your way up to his arena and you fight him, and he's just really tall colossi. He's the biggest colossi you're gonna fight so far in the game, and he has a weapon which hasn't been introduced yet. So he's the introduction to colossi wielding something, right? And he's not like much like the second colossi quad. He doesn't have like a clear like you can't climb his legs. His legs are made of just stone, and he has like these ball legs so there's no fur to grab onto. And so the way to get to him is to use the sword. And you would think there's a few different ways you can get on top of there via the sword. But the way that you're supposed to do it is there's a hard piece of like stone in his arena, and you're supposed to bait him to break or to slam his sword on that stone, which breaks like some of the armor on his arm, which reveals like a pathway.
Right.
So you can do that, or you can climb the sword because he tries to like slam the sword on you, and because it's earthland, right? It's dirt and grass. The sword will kind of like plunge the earth, and it gives you a little bit of time to climb onto the sword and like traverse up that way. And you don't have to break his it's like a arm brace or something that you break when he does hit that piece of stone. But you don't have to, right? There's ways to like traverse around that. But that's just a tool or an option for you as the player. This fight, I remember when I first did it, I was very intimidated. I was stuck on it for a while because I didn't know how to get on top of this guy. I was like, what? How do you get on this guy? Until eventually I just found, I figured it out through trial and error. And I don't know, just that first cutscene of him just towering over you on this arena will always be a memory I hold for this game. And I think he's probably the best opening colossi in the first half of the game. He's like one of the better ones, and he's even better than a lot of the end game colossi. I think, in my opinion. So I'm putting him in S. That might be a little too generous. I know I rambled there for a bit. I'm sorry. Guys, you can take the floor. You can let me know if you want to move him down or what.
So he's the first boss, first colossi that actively actively goes for you. The first two did. I'm not gonna say they didn't, but this guy was like at this point it felt like, okay, the colossi are on notice. Two of them are already dead. This guy knows you're here. This guy knows you're coming for him. So now he's literally armed, and he actively tries to take you out. So that definitely puts him above Valis and Quad, because this guy's actively fighting you. So now it feels like a fight, albeit a very mismatched fight. So yeah. I like the fact that you reminded me of the mechanic where he would break his bracer, because now it's coming back to me. So that's now an introduction to using the terrain. Yeah, the terrain to actually affect the colossi, which you get to use it more and more as the colossi like ramp up. As far as S goes, I mean, I don't know. S or definitely an A contender. He's definitely a good fight. I like the fact that he's your first aggressive, hyper aggressive enemy. I'm gonna pass it off to Esoteric. See what he has to say, because I'm still thinking about S or A tier, me personally.
Personally, I would say A tier. I feel like there are other contenders that have the S tier spot. When I did fight him, he's definitely very intimidating. He was, as Kong stated, the tallest monster uh, after the two that you faced. He was also scary because he, as Gunner stated, he initiates contact. So he doesn't wait for you to come to him; he comes to you. Um, and also, as you stated with the bracer, his torso being dismantled after he hits that rock, which allows some terrain interaction, a part of the whole puzzle in which to climb him. You know, all that is great. I feel like he would have been a little more intimidated if he had more attacks, because from what I recollect, all he did was the vertical swing.
Mhm.
And that was pretty much it. He didn't try to step on you or anything, and I feel like that could have been a lot more. That could have added a lot more to the fear. For this particular Colossi. Um, so I would say with that, I would say he's A tier. He's definitely a step above the last two, but I would put him
Mhm.
A tier because there's definitely some other nominees that I feel would be considered the for the S tier spot.
Okay. Gunnar, I know you were still kind of
Yeah,
gathering your
no.
thoughts. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd have to settle for A tier. While a very
okay.
good Colossi, if I want to kind of be fair in terms of aesthetics, the tools that they bring, and like the setting of the fight, because I think the setting of a lot of these fights plays a level to the overall presentation of the Colossi. Yeah, I think A is a good spot for him. A very good fight, but maybe not S tier. Very, very good A though.
Okay.
Because I must say though, you know, a lot of the Colossus are they're interactive in a sense of like how you navigate them, but as far as attacks go, they're pretty much for the most part one trick ponies. So
I
I
mean,
don't
they're
know if
all very limited in their
yeah,
attack pools. Some have more stuff than
yeah,
others, but generally they don't
yeah,
have more than 2 to 3 attacks,
yeah.
if
That's what I
memory
was gonna
serves.
say. So I was gonna retract the statement about Gaius because I mean I can retract it, but then still keep it there because he still had a lot to work with. He was a biped colossi, so he can attempt to step on you. He can do some horizontal swings. Um, you know, he had a little more versatility from his counterparts. So yeah, yeah, he can stay in A.
Okay.
Definitely
I'm
stay in
willing to settle in A. To me, he's still S tier, but that's okay. I can live with a high A. But we'll continue on, and we can like demote and promote positions as we see fit. That's okay.
Okay.
So fourth up is Phaedra. Phaedra. I don't know how you would say this, but I'm gonna say
Uh,
Phaedra.
Who the hell is
Phaedra?
Phaedra again? I don't know them by the name, so
Again, these are names that are found on the wiki and stuff, and it's pretty unanimous. This is like these are the names. So, but I knew
oh,
them
the
by
giraffe
numbers.
looking one.
So this is the giraffe looking one with like the he has like the long stone kind of like mustache, long mustache. I guess I don't know how you would describe it, but yeah, he's like kind of like a horse. He has like very thin legs. He's a quad pedal. This one, I'm not a huge fan. This is like for sure C tier in my opinion. So the fight primarily was you, or at least by design, like how it was supposed to be fought or supposed to be played. You're supposed to go into like these little tunnels, and he kind of like hunts for you and looks for you, and you're supposed to jump on his on these like long. I'm gonna just call it a mustache. This long stone mustache,
Oh, like the
right?
tassels you talk about?
Sure, tassels is a much better word. Yeah, the tassels on his face, right? You're supposed to grab onto that and get onto him that way, and then you just, I think, stab the two areas, and that's it. Not a bad fight. I mean, it introduced the whole like another element of using the terrain to your advantage. So I don't think it was a bad fight, but it definitely felt like a huge step back compared to the first 3 fights, especially after Gaius. It's such a confrontational fight to then be like, oh, hiding and shit, and like, I don't know. I was just like, all right, this one's kind of lame. And then he looks kind of like, I don't know, just looks kind of not intimidating. Like, this is one of the few colossi that I just kind of shrugged it off. I was like, okay, sure. So I don't know. For me, he's like a C, maybe even a D, but I'll put
Ooh,
him in
man.
C because, like, I don't think he was terrible. I think he had value as far as like a gameplay perspective. I could think of some D guys that are below this fight in the future, but like, yeah, I'm good with C. I'll put him here. What do you guys think?
Mm. I I agree with the placement. Um, I think I definitely agree with most of the things Kong said. Aesthetically, I think he looks cool, but yes, he's definitely not intimidating. And absolutely, the most monumental thing that Kong said was that he was a step back from the prior 3. Like you know, you went from Gaius, who noticed you, who initiated contact, to, from what I recollect, Phaedra, you actually had to shoot your arrow to like kind of initiate contact with him for him to even notice you. And I understand they're Colossus, they're not gonna see what's an ant to a boot sort of type of ordeal,
Right.
right? But it's just like, even after you initiate the contact, he's so lackadaisical. He's just looking around. Then he kind of peeks his head underneath to see if you're there, and it's like it becomes the same thing over. He has the stomps that I would have liked Gaius to do, because he does stomp if he knows you're within his vicinity, but
Mhm.
that's where it stops, right? Like, he doesn't try to like swing his neck at you to kind of shove you out the way, or he doesn't do like a body slam. He could have done so much more with himself, that all he did was stomp and look for you. That was pretty much it. So yeah, I'm content with him being in C. C for content.
um, yeah, I think C is a good spot with him. I also agree. I think he's an aesthetically pleasing colossi. Like, I think he looks cool. I like the whole giraffe or maybe horse theme that they were kind of going for with him. But yeah, in terms of a fight, I can see what they were trying to go with him. I think they did the whole kind of hiding mechanic a lot better in future colossi that we'll talk about on this list. Uh, yeah, I think C is a fair spot for him. Yeah, I can't think of much to say to elevate him. So I,
Yeah,
I
I didn't feel any overwhelmingness fighting him whatsoever. Like,
no,
the other three was like, holy shit, oh my god, like, they're intimidating. With him, it was like, yeah, it's just a statue moving around, all angelic.
yeah,
So
and then some of the others we haven't gotten to, they do some off the wall shit.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think he's like one of the first weaker colossi we've come across.
agreed.
And I wanted to point one more thing out because you just kind of planted the seed in my head, Esoteric, where you said like, some of his attacks, like he doesn't like body slam or like swing his neck and stuff like that, and that's true. And I'll defend him a little bit because I think it's purposeful, right? Because if you think about, like, there are colossi that are heavily armored and are mostly stone, and he's one of them, right? There's not a lot of like, uh, just you know, what would you call it? Oh my god, I'm drawing the blank here.
Uh,
Like he like, if we look at Valus, right? A lot of his body is like flesh, right?
Yeah, so he's more
And
flexible.
right, so he's able to like move a certain way.
Yeah,
Um, whereas this thing is like, it's more stone based and more statuesque.
okay.
So like that's gonna limit his ability to do moves and things like that. And so
Yeah,
I
he was a
think
lot more
that's
rigid.
he's
Yeah.
very rigid, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's by design. And this might be like, also like a because of his placement, like after these 3 fights, right? He might be like that break boss where it's just like, okay, let's give the player something to kind of like.
I think so. Yeah.
So that plays against them, unfortunately, with our tier list. But like, I think this. I don't think he's bad, right? But like, he's just kind of like a step back, and like the momentum really takes a dip um, after
Yeah.
fighting these 3. So I just wanted to like add that in there and like to like kind of head nod to like the development team and like the directors and stuff. I don't think this is a bad design. I think I know what they were trying to do with this, and you know I don't think it was bad in the grand scheme of things. But just comparing everything 1-to-1, he just kind of falls short. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I was giving that you know, some thought as to him, like the inability for him to contort his body in certain ways due to him having like such uh armor on his body. But I mean, some of the things, like maybe he can't do the whole neck thing, but definitely the body slam. Like he could have just dropped himself to the ground, you know, get back up. I believe his knee joints are pretty mobile from what I recall. I mean, yeah, I think so. I think they are. But I do get your point. Like, he could be the punching bag boss for the intermission for the real fights. I think he actually is because it starts revving up real quick after him, if I'm not mistaken.
correct. So number 5 is Avion. This
Yeah.
was gonna be the first A tier for me. Um, a part of me wants to put him up here, but he is limited on what his fight really is. So Avion is the 5th Colossi. He is the falcon, the eagle, whatever bird this is based off of. You fight him in this like sunken kind of castle like area, and he's like perched on the top of this tower, and you have to get his attention with your bow and arrow, and he flies toward you with his wings spread out, and you have to jump on the fur of his wings, and then he starts to just fly into the air and start doing barrel rolls and doing all these air tricks, and you have to traverse his body, both his wings and his tail, because those are the weak spots. You have to traverse it while he's in the air flying about, you know, managing your grip meter and all that. This was the first fight that truly like um this fight wasn't like a sense of scale where like fighting Gaius and Valus and Quadratus, like there was a sense of scale, like whoa, this thing is huge, right? Avion wasn't that big of a colossi. His fight itself was a scale. Like it wasn't him that was the colossi, it was the fact that you were fighting something airborne and you were managing all these different things. This was the first time where you had to like manage your grip meter in a really high stress situation, which I think is another like really smart game design decision on their part to put him here and not like Colossi 8 or 9, because there's some other Colossi that are coming up where they do test your ability to handle stress and your grip meter in these like highly stressful, uncomfortable situations where you're not on the ground or on your horse, right? You're like out of your element. So Avion is like probably one of my favorite probably my favorite. I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. But he's definitely up there. He's like definitely in the top 3 for me. Just looking at the list here, Avion. This is a great boss battle, and it was a nice change of pace from Colossi 4. Really revved up, like you said, Esoteric. So, what do you guys think?
Um, I feel like we're gonna have to, you know, this might be contradictive to what I said prior to the other Colossi, but
Uh oh.
I have to move my boy to S tier, man. Like I have to move him to S tier simply because you did hit the nail on the head, Kong, in terms of like the scaling between you, the Wanderer, to the Colossi wasn't the deal for me. It was more so the scaling between the Wanderer and the environment, because like
Right.
you already know my 2 biggest fears, which you kind of align with, are, you know, the skies and the sea. So for you to take to the sky on this Colossi, managing your stress meter, which already lets you know that you have limited, you know, grip capability, that you're going to let go at any given point if you don't manage it properly. Because let's be for real, the other 4, it was a cakewalk in comparison to this guy. Like, you know, gravity is a actual thing for this fight because he does barrel rolls, as you stated. His wings flap. Like he was the most, in terms of his anatomy, he was the most articulate monster. Like
Yeah.
he did the barrel roll. His wings actually like were triple jointed, so each portion of it kind of like had some fluidity to it. Where if you was on one end, you probably would fall, as opposed to being on another end, and so on and so forth. Um, getting his attention and him interacting with you and acknowledging you while you're on him. Like in my opinion, he did the most interaction. As opposed to like the prior ones we mentioned. Like he's doing barrel rolls. He's moving one of his wings to get you the hell off. When you're on his head, he kind of like shifts his head around for the most part. I think the only thing that they could have done to make this particular fight better was him running into actual like terrain, like running into the pillars to knock you off, or like you would see little arches, like him flying through the arches and kind of like just contorting and shifting his body in a way that he can clip his wing without taking damage, but he's trying to knock you off, things like that.
I don't remember. I don't mean to cut you off, but like as you're talking, I'm playing the fight in my head. I don't remember if he flies down to the water and tries to drown you in if you're on the one end of the wing, if he puts his wing in the water. I feel like I remember that, but that might be a mismemory. But if I'm remembering that correctly, that's just, I don't know. That just came to my mind. I felt like throwing that out there. That might be untrue though. I don't know.
Like I don't remember that. I don't remember him utilizing the environment to his advantage, except for the air, pretty much.
Yeah.
And, like him rotating. But the only two things that I would have loved, and it would have been the perfect fight, the ultimate perfect fight for me, was if the area wasn't surrounded by water, because it would have added extra fear. Like, holy shit, I will hit the ground if I don't manage my my meter. And if he was interacting with the pillars and whatnot, trying to like glide through some of them and trying to knock you off and things like that. Like that would have been completely epic. But even though those things were absent, I still give him S tier because he really set the bar high from the last four, in my opinion.
All right, Gunner, let's hear it.
Oh, yeah. I think S tier is kind of appropriate. I think I could agree. I think this is our first S tier.
Really?
Now,
and not Gaius? Oh
well,
my god, I find that so hard to believe. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
See, the reason, okay, the reason why is because like this is the first fight that kind of changes, not kind of, it changes the game, so to speak. So up until this point, you've encountered two bipedal colossi, one that was kind of slow, kind of introductory, one that was way more aggressive. You've encountered your first quadruped colossi. Both of them kind of on the slow side. Phaedra is a lot more slower. But Avion, this is like, okay, so now we're gonna be fast and we're gonna be airborne.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first met this guy, I was colossi, giant stone creatures with organic bits in them. I didn't think
organic. That was the word I was trying. Fuck. Thank you.
Organic. Yeah.
Jesus Christ! What a brain fart. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm good.
Happens to me all the time, man.
God damn it! Do I feel like a dumbass right now? How do I not? Anyway, go ahead. Continue, please.
No, you're good. Probably, depending on the age of the audience, they don't even know what that word means. So you're fine.
Well. Anyway.
So yeah, like I didn't think these things would be capable of flight. So when I first saw this, I was like, "This is a bird? They can do that?" And I have a big thing with heights. I do not. This again, I was feeling anxiety, a level of anxiety, and this is a video game. And the fact that he would try to do barrel rolls and try to flip you off was like a whole new element that up to this point we haven't seen yet. So the fact that now Avion's the first creature that we know they can fly without, going back to my PlayStation 2 days, not knowing what else was in store, I was like, oh, this shit is fucking. I didn't think this could get any more insane, and yet here we are. So I think
Yeah.
based on that alone, he kind of edges out
Okay.
the S award.
And also to add to Gunner's point as well, like this was the very first Colossi where you weren't fighting it in a controlled space. Like you when you fight Gaius, you can control whether or not you fall off of that arena because he would attack, yes, or whatnot. But you can control like your spacing, and you can do the same thing with the prior three as well. But with Avion now, like you're stuck in the air. It's either you're on his wings, or you on him, or you're in the water. Either, like there was no real control space for you to. I guess you can say the control space was him if you knew how to manage your meter right and whatnot. So yeah, it was a phenomenal fight. My boy has to get S tier, man.
Listen, I'm okay with that. It's just I feel like Guy should be up here, but I'm gonna leave him in A as a standard bearer because A is still a very respectable score or respectable rank. So I'm okay with it. But you guys raised some really good points.
Trust me, bro. There's a guy that is to me is S tier in my heart, but he is not S tier on this ranking. So
Oh, I wonder. Okay, wonder who that might be.
Well, moving on. Any other points you wanted to make about Avion, Gunner? I know you were still like kind of
no, I think I got the gist of it out. Yeah.
okay. So next up is Barba. This is the bearded colossi. I am tempted to put him at the top of B because to me, he is just another Valis with a few extra elements. This one you have to fight him in a temple. You have to hide from him, and he kind of bends down, and you have to use his beard as a means to getting up to his weak points. And he has a giant sword. I think he does, right? No, he doesn't have a sword. I'm thinking of the other guy.
No,
He doesn't have a sword. He just has like his bare fist or whatever. I think I forget what his weak points were. I think it was on his arm, one on his head, one on his side, or something like that. This to me is just like another Valis, just maybe a little stronger, maybe a little harder to figure out. I don't have much more to say than that.
You know what? That's probably why I memory hold him because I think I feel the same way. I could because when we were doing our research beforehand, I'm like, I don't remember him. I know I've beaten this game because I've seen the ending, so I had to have fought him. There's no skipping a Colossi, but I don't remember this guy, and I think that's why. Because I guess I just kind of in my brain merged him with Valis because they are fundamentally the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think yeah. I mean, obviously his mechanics are different in that he'll bend down to try to look for you, but that's more so the game initiating that mechanic in order to begin the fight than anything special he was doing. Unlike Gaius, which was actually using his weapon to physically try to kill you, or Avion, who was using the ability of flight to swoop down and grab you with its talons or try to knock you with its wing. He was just bending down. So, yeah, I think he's B. He's not C material, but he's just like Valis's big brother, which who
Mm-hmm.
knows, man? That might be fucking canonical for all I know. But yeah, yeah, he's not bad, but he's definitely a B guy.
Esoteric?
yeah, yeah, I would have to agree. That was my reasoning why I kind of went with the whole Street Fighter analogy, in association with like Ken and Ryu. Like Valis is Ryu, Ken is Barber, right? Simply because Barber has more utility. He's much more aggressive. He has the terrain back in him because if I'm not mistaken, there was a bunch of like pillars and a lot of shit around for you to kind of like hide from him as he's looking for you. Um, he had more armor, so navigating him to get to his weak points were a little more challenging than Valis. Yeah, he just had a little more than what Valis had. But at the end of the day, much like Street Fighter, a Shoto is a Shoto is a Shoto, right? So it's he. I would say yes, he's higher than Valis because of all the mechanics that was introduced for his fight, but B is where it stops, in my opinion.
Okay, agree. I think that's pretty unanimous.
Yeah.
Number 7, Hydrus. This is the first, I think, only underwater colossi. This guy, like, okay, so me, I have a fear of water and anything that lives underwater. So this was already like heightened stress for me. He's also very creepy looking. Like when you're okay, so if you play the original PS2 Shadow of the Colossus rather, the game already has like a muddy filter. Plus, the game is like max 420p or whatever. So like it's already hard to see certain things when you compare it to like HD 4K graphics of today. Like when something is unrecognizable, it's inherently more scary. So when I first fought him and I'm underwater and I see the snake with these fucking electric pillars and this long stringy mustache, right? Just swimming, and I'm like, I'm expected to fight this fucking thing in here, right? It's like, there's no fucking way. Like, how am I supposed to fight? And he could electrocute me, right? And I'm underwater. Like, what are we talking about right now? This was like a pretty like intimidating point of the game for me. There were a few others like Avion. That was pretty intimidating, but I had a lot of fun fighting him. Hydrus, I was stressed the fuck out. And he would do this thing because you have to like kind of traverse, not I guess down his body or up his body depending on where you land. Like you're kind of on this piece of land, and you have to like swim into the water and then just grab onto the fur, like at the first chance you get, and just kind of like try to work your way to his head as he's swimming, and he keeps like dipping into the water, coming up the water, dipping into the water, and you have less control underwater. You can't really move, right? Because you're holding on to him. You can't move forward, so you have to wait till he gets out of the water to try to get some traction there. But he'll troll you, and he'll just like kind of come out the water and immediately dip, and then you'll lose your grip, and then he'll swim away again. So like this fight was like super stressful for a lot of reasons. He to me, I would put him in S tier behind Avion because the fight was so unique and there's no other fight like it. Much like Avion, there is no other real airborne fight. I mean, Colossus 13, there's an argument for that, but it's not really the same. Hydrus, there is no other water Colossi. So for that, I'd give him S tier because he's like totally unique, but not a better fight than Avion. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. That was a whole creepy. That whole fight was creepy because Avion had water to kind of help you, the player, so you're not fucking creamed into the floor and like you're left a stain on the floor. So the water was for you. But with Hydrus, the water was for him, and just like the introduction to seeing him, where you just see something in the water and you see things pulsing because he has his electric spines, and you're like, oh fuck, I gotta what? How am I gonna do? I don't have scuba gear. Like, how am I gonna fight this thing? And like now they swim, so like once like Avion kind of opened the door, but Hydrus was like, all right, so at some point I'm going to space because now these things swim. So and you know, pretty much like you said, the fact that he had the electric spines, which could deal damage to you, the fact that he would actively try to drown you, and you kind of had to hold on for dear life or let go and start the whole fight phase over again. I think the combination of all of that made him for a really fun boss. And like you said, he's the only water boss. There's only one aquatic-based colossi, and it's him. So I think that kind of just bumps him up to S. He was a creepy boss. I did not like fighting him. Not that he was bad. It's just I didn't like fighting him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's unanimous in the creep factor. I don't know if you guys remember when I was streaming or if you guys saw, but like I had to pause for a moment because again, I recently played this game, and I had no idea that this was one of the fights. So again, kind of going back to my fear of heights and water, this made it that much. I'm more fearful of water, not so much of the water itself, but what's in the water. So to see this humongous thing in the water, like I literally during me like having that pause moment, I had to compartmentalize this being a game from my fear because it really like it really made me anxious fighting him. Um, then not to mention, for people who know science, water conducts electricity. So how the hell am I supposed to fight this thing with the electricity, as you guys stated, was pulsating in the water? So it's like, well, shit, how do I even get close to him? So my guess was, maybe this is the first colossi where you actually have to use your sword to kind of knock the pillars off. That didn't work. So every time he would dip into the water, because he has like these kind of sequences where he'll kind of raise part of his body out of the water, and I would kind of align that when he does it with the pillars so that if he goes down in the water, I would kind of jump away because I'm thinking the electricity is going to get me. But apparently the electricity wasn't as potent as I thought it was. I was kind of like overthinking it. And not to mention, you can't knock those things off because once you do that, it's a useless fight. Like he's not gonna try to eat you. He doesn't do that. And also, if I'm not mistaken, the placement of his vulnerable spots were literally right behind each pillar. So you had to kind of like get behind the pillar, stab him before he, as Gunner stated, actively drowns you. So I'm in agreement with everything that you guys said. He's definitely S tier. I felt like the Avion fight was way more dynamic, way more fun. But this is definitely a good right behind because, like, again, the terrain, the colossi, and just the overwhelmingness of the fight in all, like it was just amazing. I felt so accomplished beating him, and I felt like I kind of indirectly got over my fear of water, which fun fact, I didn't, because if I saw some shit like that in the water, I like I'm food. Okay, I'm food. But yeah, I agree. S tier, right behind Avion.
All right. Next up is Colossi number 8, Kuramori. This guy, you fight him in this like a Colosseum like castle, and he's in the center of it, and you have to use the crumpled up sections to kind of like shoot your arrow at his like glowing arms. Yeah, like he has like these pulsating like sacks of energy in his forearms and his hind legs, and you shoot that down to get him onto his backside. He falls onto the ground, and his weak spot is his stomach, which he protects because he's always on his hind legs and he's always climbing, right? So getting to his stomach is really difficult, right? And his back is like armored. I know this guy doesn't have a lot of attacks. He usually just shoots like energy at you. So one of the few colossi that have like elemental like energy to him. But all that being said, it wasn't like that. Once you figure him out, it's kind of a boring fight. Because there's not much to him than that. There is no real climbing. There's just like, again, this is one of the monsters that like he's not a colossi per se. It's more of the environment that's like colossi like, and you have to use the Colosseum and the structure itself to trick him and to like get him on his back. If you had to fight this thing without that environment, he would be incredibly difficult. Because again, his only weak spot would be his stomach, so he would be a super hard fight on like if you just fought him on a flat land. Would that make him better? I don't think so. That would just make him frustrating.
That would make him even more boring because he's not doing anything to climb. He's just walking towards you and blasting you. So
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I think this is a pretty weak Colossi. He's a cool design. Like even his picture is like really cool, but like
Yeah.
I don't know. This might be like either C or even like D tier. I'd argue. What do you guys think?
yeah, I would say low C or D. Absolutely. One trick pony fight. He does his little flashy moves, which is very limited. He's a very aesthetically pleasing monster. He kind of reminds me of a little bit of like his back. Mostly, he reminds me of a Cantor from Monster Hunter.
I could
With
see
the
it.
ridges on
Yeah.
his back, the way that he glows and whatnot, and that's one of my favorite monsters. But other than that, he's definitely a one-trick pony. Or he does his climb. You figure him out. That's it. You can probably kill him at like 2 downs, and
Yeah.
there's nothing else that he does. It's just a rinse and repeat type of fight. So I would agree. Like, yeah, I would agree with D. He looks cool, but he looks cool. The environment looks cool in which that you fight him, but everything else just falls flat on his face.
Yeah. So personal preference, I kind of like close quarters battles personally because it adds more tension to the fight. If a space is too wide, I feel like I have ultimate safety unless the creature has a way to get to me quickly. So I kind of liked Kuromori because it was in an enclosed space. But if I'm gonna be fair, if I'm gonna be objective and take that personal like out, yeah, I can't. Like he was really quick to down. If memory is serving me correctly, personally, he was one of the quickest ones that I took down on a first playthrough, which I definitely couldn't say for the majority of these colossi. So even though I like where you fight him and I like the tension that fight brought for me personally, I think he's a D. I think he's a D, unfortunately.
Okay. Unanimous D tier. Sorry, Kuramori. You're a cool monster, but just not cooler than these guys.
Yeah.
If they got a statue of him, I'll definitely buy it. But other than that, that's where it goes. That's where my admiration for the Colossi. That's as far as it goes.
Fair enough. So number 9, Basaron. This guy you have to use. So he's a giant turtle-like monster. He's like a bigger Quadratus. That name is so weird to me. It's so hard to say.
Quadrat. It's like a math problem.
Quadratus. Yeah.
Quadratus.
Yeah.
Quadratus. I like that pronunciation. Quadratus. Basaron. I think he looks really cool, and I tried to find like the coolest pictures of them to make them look really big. That had like decent quality.
Yeah. That's like some Cthulhu shit right there.
Yeah. So I like him, but the fight itself, like you have to use these geysers to basically kick him off balance in order to get to his back and to the top of his head. So again, another monster or another colossi where you have to use the environment, and it's a different element. Like it's not like you're hiding or you're breaking something. This time you're like using a very active element that's like exclusive to this area, exclusive to this fight, which I think is cool. Like that adds a lot to him. So I'd put him right here next to Barba, in the top of B, because to me he's just another Quadratus, but just with an added like environmental element. What do you guys think?
Okay, so for me personally, I think he's a B. So at first I was gonna leave him at C because I was like, oh, this guy was a pain in the ass because controlling the legendary horse to kind of lure him into the fucking geyser was a fucking pain. That was I know Esoteric hates the horse. I think he's a little bit too mean to our boy
that
Addo.
horse, man. That horse had a mind of its own. It didn't listen. It was just, oh my god! Like I hated him so much, and he made this such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, he did. But like I've seen the fight done without the horse, so it's just like, was that me adding a level of personal difficulty and annoyance when I could have just fought him normally without Addo? I don't know. So I'm like, I don't know if I should count Addo in the fight, which would definitely bring him down to a C for me personally, or if I remove him from the fight and just kind of base the Colossi. So I figured, all right, let me just base it on the Colossi itself. And that's why he moves up to a B for me. Kind of the same as Quadratus, because it's just it's a more advanced Quadratus, but I do like the fact that you use the geysers as a way to literally knock him off balance. I think that's a cool effect. So I figured, let me take Addo out of the equation, and because I take him out the equation, for me, he moves up from a C to the B that he is in now.
Okay. Esoteric?
Yeah, I would have to say B as well. It took me a while to figure this monster out.
I remember that night. I was
Yeah, I knew it had something to do with the geysers, but I think my placement was probably off or the positioning. Um, Honestly, for these games, like for the people that make Shadow of the Colossus and like Ico and stuff, navigating certain things or certain components within those games can be really difficult at times, and also giving the age of the game as well. So playing it more recent, that could have definitely been a absolute factor as to why I was unable to down this Colossi much quicker. But I would have to say, yeah, he's definitely higher than Quadratus. The geysers definitely help with the terrain. Just the whole um ambiance of the area, like the whole setting was so barren. It was like misty, so it kind of added more fear to the monster. I mean, to the Colossi. Um, but he was pretty much quadratic quadratus with a little more bells and whistles. Like the guys that had to tip him over, then you had to like kind of shoot under his hooves
yeah.
to kind of tilt him over. Um, and then you had to climb up on him. It was a fun. I think it was overall a fun fight. Definitely the stupid ass horse kind of took away from that. Um, I'm idealistically speaking, I feel like the horse was meant to be a part of the battle, given the whole barren space for it to like run around and stuff. Um, but you have some masochists who likes to do things on foot. Or maybe I'm the masochist because I tried to make that horse work. But anyway, he added a lot more to the fight. But I wouldn't put him any higher than where he is now on the list. So yeah.
Okay. Number 10 is Dirge. This is the sand snake colossi that you fight in a cave. You don't climb this one. He lives underground, and he stalks you in the cave. This one was pretty scary. This is probably one of the scariest encounters in the game, in my opinion. It took me a little bit to figure out how to beat him because you do have to use the horse, otherwise he will
Yeah.
kill you. Because he again, he lives in the sand. He just like swims in the sand. To beat this guy, you have to use aggro to kind of bait him around to come out of the sand, or at least his head to come out of the sand and open his eyes. You shoot his eyes, you blind him for a second, and hopefully, in blinding him, you have to kind of bait him to hit this pillar, and that's how you get on his weak spot. To me, that's a pretty unique mechanic, exclusive to this fight. I'd put him in B tier, or not B tier, A tier, right behind Gaius. I don't think this fight is better than Gaius. I think there's more going on, but the Gaius fight for me is way more enjoyable than this one because once you figure it out, it's pretty easy. It's just getting to that figuring out point is intimidating and scary, but once you're there, it's like okay, it becomes a nothing burger. But it's still a great fight and it's a unique mechanic. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah. Um. How do I feel about this one? I think unrelated to this game, but creatures like Nibblesnarf from Monster Hunter.
I was literally thinking that.
Yeah, kind of like fucking. It's spoiled and sullied any sand-based creature for me. So when I first fought this, I didn't know about Nibblesnarf, but now unfortunately he's kind of linked to him. So I'm trying
Oh
to take
man.
that bias away. I just hate sand creatures because like I feel like they're just fucking swimming in the damn sand all day, and unlike water where I could dive and maybe try to catch them, I can't dive into sand.
True.
So this was another one where this one, you like you said, you had to use the horse, and I just had trouble with it, so it compounded the frustration of the fight. But yeah, being fair and being like trying to think about it fairly. Once you got the horse down, and once you realized that all you had to do was blind it and have it hit the wall or some of the mushroom shaped rocks that are in the field that are designed for him to run into it, it became a lot more manageable. So when I played the game again, I was able to down this guy really fast. So, man, for me, I don't know about A, but
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
What would you put him?
me, I, I would put him at B personally. I don't think he's C. That's kind of disrespectful. The monster's still cool in its function, but I don't know. It's just like when you broke it down and said like once you blind them and knock them out, it becomes a nothing burger. It's just like, yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
So is it A tier worthy? I don't know. I'm leaning towards B, but I mean I'll let Esoteric go because
Yeah.
I'm
Let's
personally leaning towards
see
B.
what
Yeah,
Esoteric has to say.
yeah.
Honestly, I might just put him behind Valis. I mean, he's just Hydrus with slight variations. Like that's what he is to me.
Yeah, he's a Hydrus, but in the sand, and he has less
Yeah,
going on. True.
yeah, he's basically Hydrus with less going on. The horse being a mechanic, don't like the horse. So as as Gunnar so eloquently put it, it compounds the frustration. Um, he's a one-trick pony. Like for anybody who's played any type of game or has like experience in games, you'll know that anything that glows is usually a target, which is always his eyes. He's always chasing you. The only thing he does is maybe a slight jump at you. I don't. Yeah, he's nothing to me really. I don't care for him. Eh, I
Damn.
I personally don't. I don't. I like he has nothing really going for himself. Like the sand doesn't scare me. He doesn't scare me. Like compared to Hydrus, it's yeah.
I don't know, man. Like again, and this is exclusive to my first encounter with him, so maybe I'm putting too much stock in that. Because again, once you figure him out, it's not a big deal. But like that first encounter is huge. Like this guy's really intimidating. But
Well,
after that,
yeah. I
it's
can see
like,
that.
yeah. So I don't know, but I can concede B. I don't. Um, I can
Now,
see why because that's all he has, right? Like he just chases you, he just rams you. That's it, and he tries to eat you. That's literally all he does. He doesn't do anything dramatic. Not that anything else on this list really does that much more, but he does even less than some of these other guys. So I could see that.
Yeah, I feel like he should have been maybe the introduction to Hydrus. Like he should have been before Hydrus,
Mm.
and then I probably would have bumped him up a little bit. But Hydrus would have stayed in the same spot because he's way more intimidating than Dirge, in my opinion. Like way, and then incorporating aggro into the fight, who is not the most, you know,
Cooperative.
yes, cooperative horse makes it that much more worse. So yeah, like
Okay. Any objections, Gunner, to mid B tier?
No, I think that's where he belongs personally.
Okay. So I will concede that. Sorry, Dirge. So Celosia or Celosia This one is the one where you have to get the fire, and he's scared of fire, and you bait him to fall off the cliff to break his back armor, and then you just basically just ride his back and just attack his back. This is the first F tier for me.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. These smaller colossi don't do it for me. I think his this is the first monster where you have to like use like something that you can hold, like a holdable tool, to bait him to like uh, fall down and break his shell, which I think is neat. That's a neat idea. Like I think I like the concept, but I think it could have been better executed with like a larger colossi. And like if there was a lot, like for example, like if this game was like being redesigned or something like that, and you wanted to use the fire element or use fire for something, like it would have been cool if there was like a big colossi that like only revealed his weak point, or revealed a climbable point in the face of fire. That would have been more interesting than how they used it in this particular fight. So for me, it's like, I don't know. Like we talked about how fighting Komori outside of the castle arena, or the Coliseum arena, would have been super irritating. That's what this fight is.
Okay.
So for me, he's an F tier. But what do you guys think?
Um, I feel like he is a cool colossi, just in a wrong, like, I would say right colossi, but in a bad environment. You know, like once you got the fire, that was pretty much it. He'll back off, like you said. He'll fall and break his back, and that was essentially practically the end of the fight for the most part. You just had to play the waiting game to jump on his back and do some damage. I don't think his size was a problem. I
Mm-hmm.
just think his difficulty was, if he was bigger, like you stated, maybe they could have done some things where he's knocking down the pillars, and like within the pillar are like oil drums that are kind of like creating a fiery path, and then you have to create like it generates like a circle, and then you have to engulf him in the middle with fire, and then start like wailing on him, or he gets so frantic where he kind of like jumps off the cliff or something. I think that would have been cooler, but
Mm.
I get your point. I don't know if I would give him F tier though. That's kind of low. I think he needs some. I think he needs a sympathy bump.
He ain't getting one from
Sympathy
me.
bump.
But let's
uh,
hear Gunner. Let's see what he has
okay,
to say.
so this is another one that kind of falls into the same vein as Kuromori. I like the enclosed fights. I actually like. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but I like the smaller colossi because I don't know. It just feels. I guess in my brain, it feels more manageable than this
Mm-hmm.
giant creature, which again is counterintuitive to the point of the game. But being older and thinking more logically about it, I can see why you would say F, because while the mechanic is neat, while the mechanic of using the fire to kind of scare him off the cliff so he can bust his back armor, and the fact that he's smaller, so because he's smaller, he's more maneuverable, he can turn faster. I remember I was getting bowled over by him consistently when I first played this. But when you break it down, and once he lands and breaks his back armor, that's essentially the fight. Like it's GG at that point. You could jump on him, stab the shit out of his back, and take him out pretty quickly. Whereas Kuromori had his projectiles, so he had
Yeah,
that going for him. He
that's
had the
true.
ability to climb. You had to use your bow, which there aren't a lot of. I mean, there's a decent amount of colossi you can use the bow on, but the bow was an integral mechanic for him, whereas Stelosta was just the fire. So as much as I like the visual look of the colossi and I like the smaller colossi, yeah, I can kind of see the F. Because Komori, the fact that he's electrified and has those projectiles, edges him out of the F tier and puts him in D. But Solosta doesn't have any of that. he's essentially a bull, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. I guess I was just kind of like blinded by his mobility because it's like, okay, since I'm so compact size, I can move fast, which would make him dangerous. But again, going back to the whole one trick pony aspect, it's pretty much once you and it's not like, oh, once you figure it out per se, it's like once you hit him in the right spot because you know when I first initially fought him, my thing was mostly evading him because he would just ram into you. And then just based on probability, he hit one of the torches and then the torch fell out. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, so therefore this is gonna play a key part to fighting him. I don't think I would have figured that out on my own because how everything was, there wasn't nothing that really indicated that he was weak to fire. It was just more like you're in a temple. Temple requires, you know, torches to light the way. I would have never had no idea if he didn't hit like that particular torch pillar that would have been a part of his fight. So yeah.
Sorry, pal. F tier.
yeah.
Pelagia. This is the he's man. So he's in the water, but you don't really go underwater to fight him. So I don't really count him as a water boss.
No.
But you do fight him on like a big like lake with some islands, and he is in the water. He doesn't ever really go on land except to attack you on these like little like pieces of land with like these like circular structures.
Yeah.
So this monster was pretty interesting because you have to get him to reveal himself. Like his weak point, I think is there's one on his back, but I think in order to get on him, you have to like he has to like jump on the stone structure. You have to climb on via his stomach around his back, and then you get on top of his head. You can actually steer him and control him with the teeth on his head, or those like stones on his head. They kind of control where he goes. And he does have like an electrical element. He does shoot at you. He does shoot like electric bolts at you and stuff. This fight I thought was pretty cool. I think this deserves an A. I put him up here next to Gaius. I like the way he looks. I think he's a cool looking colossi. What do you guys think?
Okay. So when I first played this game, for some reason I didn't like him at all. Like I didn't like the whole teeth mechanic. I just saw it like, what is with these goofy teeth? I don't know. I was young. I was like, this guy's dumb. It's like, I don't know why.
He's a big stupid.
Yeah, he was just dumb. I was like a fucking Ken Masters from the Street Fighter anime. It's like, I was like, you're a loser. But being older now and playing the remaster on PlayStation 4 when it came out, yeah, I kind of did him dirty. He's not my personal favorite in terms of looks, but he's still a cool looking monster. There's still something about the teeth that is just like, I guess, but I do like the fact that you have to kind of lure him to these, I guess, islands, for lack of a better word, to like get him to rear up and use that as a vehicle to climb him. And then the fact that you can control him is the only colossi that you can directly manipulate with the teeth thing, and slamming him into those islands to knock him back. Correct me if I'm wrong. You didn't break anything off of him by knocking him in, or
No. I think
okay.
you. Did you? I don't remember.
No, I think what happens is the more pillars that you break, you kind of miss your chance of attacking his weak spot on his belly. So, because what he would do that was super intimidating for me was he'll kind of take his front legs and then kind of like tower over you while you're on the pillar, and then you'll reveal his stomach. And if if he bumps into that pillar, you're shit out of luck with attacking him in the stomach because that was the only way to reveal it.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that being said, like taking away my younger self's bias and looking at this with a older set of eyes, I can agree with A, because I do like the fact that you have that direct manipulation of him, which you don't get with any other Colossus on this list. So that kind of bumps it up in the interesting, unique factor of the fight. And I think he's one of the more interesting quadruped battles out of all the quadruped battles we've talked about up to this point. I think he's definitely one of the more interesting. So yeah, I can agree with A. Low A, back of the A pack. Yeah, I can agree with that personally.
Yeah, I would have to agree as well. Like of all the quadrupeds, he definitely was the most interactive, the most fun out of them. Thus far, I think he's the last one actually, if I'm not mistaken. He's the last quadruped.
I mean, if you don't count 14, which is another bull type, the Cenobia.
Oh yeah,
Cenobia.
I already know what I'm gonna give him.
Dang.
Yeah, he was this guy was like super intimidating because a portion of his a significant amount of his body was in the water, so you couldn't really gauge how big he was until he kind of lifted his legs up on the pillar, so that made him even that much more intimidating looking. I don't know if this happened to you guys though, but I remember when I fought him, how I would attack his belly, and then once he's done taking his front legs off of the pillar, how he plunges you into the water. That shit was scary
Yeah.
to me. Um, the whole navigating factor was interesting because as you guys already stated, it was the first to do that. I felt like that would have been a much better mechanic on the smaller um, colossi, the smaller colossus, simply because since they're smaller, they should be manageable, especially if you're on their back. Um, but you know, for this to be added to him, that's okay. I would have rathered you jump on the pillar and he's actually like chasing you or whatever. Um, Yeah, but overall, he was definitely a fun fight. He was the pinnacle of the quadruped monsters, in my
Yeah, I
opinion.
think he was. He's the
He
king of
was,
the quadruped fights.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Number 13, Phalanx or Phalanx. I think he is also A tier. This monster was the one you fought in the desert. He was a giant snake with like these wings, and he had uh, these bags that he would fill with sand that would give him the ability to float and fly. I think when I was talking earlier about Avion and how he would dip his wing into the water, I was actually confusing him for Phalanx because he would do that. He would dip his wings into the sand, and one way you can get on top of him with the horse
Yes,
is when he
yes.
does that, you would climb because his wings have ridges. You would climb and you would climb the ridges, and he would just like take off into the air. So I was thinking of him. So my bad on
Yeah.
that. And in order to get him lower, because he flies pretty high in the sky, you have to use your bow and arrow to shoot at the the weird bags of sand to kind of have him descend, and he could refill it and go back into the sand and kind of ascend into the air again. This fight I really liked. I'd actually put him ahead of Palgia, maybe even ahead of Gaius, because of some of the intense moments. Again, the air battle. Once you're in the air, it's really fucking intense because the controls are very they're of a different time, so they're harder to you don't have the same level of mastery that you could with like a more modern game. Like if you played something like Dragon's Dogma and you compared the mounting mechanic of that game or even Monster Hunter compared to this game, there's a giant gap in quality
Yeah, it's a
control.
good. Yeah, it's a good point actually.
So when you're in the air, you're super vulnerable, or underwater, you're super vulnerable, and so it adds stress and intensity and anxiety to the fight. So for me, he's up here in A. He's the top of A for me. Um, he doesn't do anything spectacular attack wise. It's more the process of taking him down is what makes the fight unique and interesting and memorable. So for me, he's the top of A tier. What do you guys think?
Hmm. Well, this guy was like the the trifecta. He was the triple threat because this one you had to learn how to use Addo because you had to. He was moving way too fast in the air for you to catch up to him, so you had to use him. Plus, you had to combine it with the bow because you had to deflate the sandbags to get him to ground level, and then your sword, which you've been using to kill the Colossus. So the fact that you had to combine all of that together definitely bumped the fight up because with Avion, well, I think he's still like the best introduction to air combat in the game, and that's why he's still S tier. And Phalanx, is not S tier for me. The fact that you had to use the horse, you had to use the bow to bring him down, and then he still had that nerve-wracking factor of being super high in the air. Definitely solidifies him as A tier. It's like fighting a blimp. It's like fighting a living blimp. So while not as cool as Avion in terms of the flying monster, seeing as they're the only two flying monsters, he's definitely not S, but he's definitely A. I could agree with A on that. I enjoyed this fight. Not as much as Avion, but I did enjoy it. And I second the A opinion.
See now,
All right, I'm gonna put him in F. All right.
I'm a little no. He's A, but I'm a little conflicted because what's prohibiting me from making him an S tier Colossi is the lack of intuitiveness of the mechanics. Like if the horse maneuvered just the way I wanted it to, while incorporating the bow and all these other things that are factor in, I would definitely make him a S tier because he's kind of sort of a hybrid of Avion and Hydrus, where he goes into the sand where you can't really get to him, kind of like Hydrus, where he kind of submerges himself in the water and you lose grip and you have to like go back to the surface. And he also incorporates the air, not as high as Avion, but he still does that. There's still that whole flying factor. Um, I would have definitely put him in S tier if it wasn't for honestly, if it wasn't for aggro. Like aggro is the most frustrating thing of the most frustrating part of the game, like honestly, for anybody who's able to control him in such a optimal way and you like have mastery of him, kudos to you. Like I freaking sucked using him. There was like some area where you had to go through the woods, if I'm not mistaken, before you met Pelagia or whatever his name is. I believe that was where you had to go to some wood area and it was really hard to kind of navigate him to there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just I would have put him in S tier because of the amount of utility that this Colossi brings to the table. He's very dynamic. There's like maybe a few ways to kind of get on him. Like he can still be flying, but you can shoot the sacks to kind of like lower him just enough to jump on him. Then he lowers his wings where you can actually climb on on the wings. Like he's a fun fight. Just any fight with aggro kind of brings it down. I, that's just how I feel. But yeah, I can say he's definitely high A tier in my opinion too.
Would you put him before or after Gaius? Because Gaius, you don't need aggro at all.
I I would put him before Gaius simply because again, like you're dealing with an environment that you don't really have much control over. Like once you're in the sky, that's pretty much it. And once he goes into the sand, that's pretty much it. Then you also have to incorporate aggro, which plays a key part to the fight. You also have to utilize your bow, which not many Colossus requires that. Um, Gaius was a fun fight simply because he brought the fight to you and it was like a coliseum and he was like introductory to Colossus that hold weapons. But and as well as the environmental portion of it where he breaks things. But I feel like Phalanx just takes it a step above with the amount of utility he has and the terrain in which that you fight him. So
Okay.
yeah.
This is pretty unanimous high A tier for
Yeah.
Phalanx. Cenobia, F tier. This is another bull monster. He's basically the same as Colossi 11, Celosia. The difference is you have to use this ancient, pillar structure to collapse on him to break his shell, and then it's basically the same thing. Once you get that done, you just stab him in his weak point, and that's pretty much it. He's a little harder than this guy, but like I'll put him here, I guess. But like they're both F tier because they're basically one and the same.
Oh yeah, well he's bigger than Celosia, so he's not the smaller type of colossi that I personally like to fight. But yeah, I mean, to not sound like too much of a broken record. Once you figured out how to break through his armor, it was the same thing. Instead of dropping the colossi like you did with Celosia, you drop something on the colossi.
Right.
So gravity was done in both cases, but one was just falling, the other one was something falling on it. So it's like I really wish the quadrupeds seem to kind of be the weaker of the colossi with certain exceptions. I don't know what you could have done to make them more intense, but I mean they tried their best, but yeah, unfortunately he's another F tier for me. I think he looks cool. I love like the super armored look. I love the armored look of him, but yeah, in terms of a fight, it wasn't much to it, unfortunately.
Esoteric?
Yeah, I would have to honestly agree. I feel like what they could have done to answer your question, Gunna, they could have made these more of a chase sequence. As much as I hate aggro, like they could have had those colossi chasing you within certain terrain.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You know, um, I did like the fact that you had to use him for platforming purposes because it wasn't entirely just run to the pillar and then knock him and then have him knock it down to reveal his back. It was more like you're in this controlled space. You had to use a lot of platforming to kind of get to certain places. And while you're doing that, he would chase you. And then I think he'll knock each pillar down to kind of allow you to navigate further into the temple or whatever. So I did like that aspect, which put him a step above Celosia. But again, other than that, as you said, like you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head with that one. It ends up being a one trick pony because once once you reveal his back, that's pretty much a wrap.
Yeah.
What they could have also done too was like, okay, if you get enough hits, they could set like damage parameters, right? So once you reach a certain threshold, then his vulnerability will shift, and then there'll be another sequence within the fight where you'd have to maybe reveal his face, and then you'd have to like kind of have him run into something that would hurt his face, knock him down, and then you stab him that way. Like they could have done a lot more things with the quadruped monsters, but unfortunately they did. So
Do you guys think that if they kind of made maybe Zenobia or Celestia or both, if they made them like dual fights that you had to fight two of them at the same time, would that have like bumped them up, or it just would have been like frustration and boring times two now?
It would have been it would have been more frustrating, right? Because now you're fighting two monsters that all they do is run at you.
Yeah.
But depending on the level design, you could have it to where you have to use. So if we're just sticking to how you beat these things, Celosia is her weakness is fire, right? She's scared of fire, and then Cenobia, she's super armored. She doesn't, as far as we know, she's not afraid of fire. But if you could somehow lure Celosia to ram into Cenobia, right? like that can open up, like using them against each other would be an interesting dynamic. But that's not what they decided to do. They just decided to take the skin. These colossi are filler colossi. Like, let's just call it for what it is. They're just there to kind of fill out the roster, in my opinion, and just to give the player more to do, and for them to like, because there were other colossi in the design documents. They had a spider colossi, they had a monkey colossi that never saw the light of day, right? But those would have been radically different than what we have here, which would have taken more design time, more testing, blah blah blah. So it didn't make the final cut. So that's why there's like a lot of overlap with some of the colossi, because it's like, okay, well, we have this base model, this base skeleton. Let's build upon this. Let's add a few gimmicks. Let's maybe add some environmental mechanics here, and boom, here's a new colossi. So that's why they're F tier, because I don't want to say they're lazy. They're filler colossi. They're really redundant and they're filler. So
okay. I can't argue with that. Yeah.
Argus, colossi number 15. I'm gonna put right here next to Barba, because they're basically the same. He's basically Barba mixed with Gaius with less less going on, because he has this like short broadsword that he can use against you, but he doesn't really use it too often. He can slam it, and you can climb. You can use the sword as a means to climb him. But besides that, he's just a big furry boy again. So he kind of falls in this line of colossi. Not bad, but not particularly amazing. He doesn't have enough to put him into A tier. You do have to use or ideally you have to use the environment, the narrowed city halls or wherever the fuck you fight him. You fight him in like this old fucking it's almost like what would have been a market hall, right, where a bunch of vendors would sell their wares at. You basically fight him in something like that, and you have to like climb the structure and then basically convince him, or like get him to like stomp on these platforms to create a way up. Like, there's some interesting stuff happening, but like not real. Like, this fight is like kind of drawn out longer than it needs to be. It's like just more steps to these two fights. So he's not that interesting, and for it to be the second to last colossi, it's a little disappointing, in my opinion. But that's just me, though. What do you guys think?
Put that asshole behind Valis, honestly.
Ooh, really?
Put him, but like you already stated it. For him to be so late in the game and for him to be such a lackluster colossi is like a slap in the face. He didn't really do much, honestly. You had to work the terrain against him, which was honestly boring in my opinion. For this particular one, I mean, it was something that I wanted, but for him, it was really boring. He did nothing different really from Valis and Argus. Argus had the beard, so beard gang all day. No, I'm just.
Well, that's Barba. It's Barba. Argus is the one you
Barba.
hate.
Excuse me, Barba. But no, for him to be such again so late in the game, for him to be the monster that we get, I don't think it made the cut, in my opinion. And not to mention, the terrain was like a pain in the ass to navigate through. Like, it really was, like just jumping just to get to him. I don't know if you guys remember, but I spent like longer than I should have just trying to get to the top, fighting this asshole, and it was just annoying. It was just annoying for me, honestly. He looks cool as hell though. Like, the armor and everything, like the shoulder plate and the mask. He looks really cool. And his weapon is pretty awesome too. But it's just, he was the same monster with the same anatomy, doing practically the same things. The only difference was the environment that he was placed in. Honestly, it was nothing else. It was a rinse and repeat. If it was Ryu and Ken, then he was like Dan, basically.
Man, honestly, this one's another one for me that got memory hold, along with Barba. I didn't remember him until I saw Esoteric stream And I was like, oh, that's right. That was one that you fought in, like, I guess a semi-enclosed that you had to use, like, you had to get him in position to use the slabs on the floor to kind of slant it up and use that as a ramp to get onto him. And that's honestly the only thing I remember from. Like, I can remember iconic things from all the Colossi, but for him, that's all I remember from him. The fact that he was another one with a weapon, which made him stand out because a lot of these don't have like actual combat tools that they use against you, and the fact that you use the floor to get to him. So I mean, Esoteric remembers him. Me, I completely forgot about him until I saw him stream, and today when we saw like a quick speed run of him. So yeah, I got nothing to defend him with. I kind of agree where he is. Yeah, I mean, this guy I don't have a lot to say on because I, honest to God, kind of forgot about him.
He is pretty forgettable because again, he by this point in the game, you felt like you fought him already, and you kind of did.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Argus. Last but not least, Malice, the biggest colossi in the game. I think he is bottom S tier. My opinion. He is the biggest colossi. You do have to climb him. Getting to him is another task in itself, where you have to traverse like these underground tunnels, and he's shooting like these thunderbolts at you, and it's like raining. It's really atmospheric, really well, like it's really like immersive level design. You do have to climb him. You have to have mastered how to climb and how to like jump from one platform to the next flawlessly while managing your meter. When you do get to his like torso area, you have to like, and this is if you're playing the game as designed, he has to like grab you, and you have to use his hand and arm in order to like trick him to put his hand near his head, which is how you get to his weak point and how you finish him off. I think this is a really like intricate and like just, it was a perfect example of like the large scale of the game. I think Malice is a really, really good Colossi. I don't think he's a better fight than these two, Avion and Hydrus, but I think he deserves to be up here because he's so unique and there's no other fight like him. So he's an S tier for me.
I'll let Esoteric go because I might rant a little bit about him because he's my favorite. So
Oh,
in
okay, I
order
didn't know
to
that.
do that, so yeah, I'll let Esoteric go and then I'll give my piece.
I have a love-hate relationship with this fight. It was super, like, oh my god, it was super intimidating. Like this tower of a boss, with him shooting projectiles that are like super accurate for the most part. You having to really be one with the terrain and kind of like navigate through it. Um, he scared the shit out of me when he grabbed me the first time. I thought I was instant death, not realizing that that was something that I had to do, because like he was the first Colossi, excuse me, where he actually reached for you, if I'm not mistaken. Like all the other ones would just attack you, but this one was going for like grabs and whatnot. Then once you get to him, they give you another cinematic cutscene of like you in comparison to him. You're like this tiny, and he's like this freaking tall, and it's like holy shit, what am I supposed to do? You do see where you need to like kind of climb his skirt or whatever, and get to him and stuff like that. Then, if I'm not mistaken, you have to shoot the joints that are glowing his arm for him to kind of like touch a particular portion of his body for you to kind of like traverse to that point as well. He was a well thought out fight. I wish some of the other biped Colossus were as articulate as he was, because he did a lot, in terms of like his torso up when you get to that point. He was really gunning for you. The difficulty was there. It definitely, thank God, with the exception of aggro, it definitely incorporated all the mechanics that you learned thus far, and you had to kind of gain mastery for. Um, overall epic fight, and I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment when I actually did beat him. So yeah, this was like the creme de la creme of Colossi um, as a boss. As compared to the other two, I don't think that he beats that because of the whole um, atmospheric depth of Avion and Hydrus with the water and the sky. But he definitely deserves a place there, in my opinion.
Okay. So like I said, this is my personal favorite Colossus. And this is the one that's the least mobile, as in it just stands there, literally, because it can't move. But the reason why I like him is like he's obviously the final Colossi you fight, and he's a culmination of the entire game. So what I mean by that is like if you're kind of paying attention to what you're doing in the game and everything that's kind of like the story bits that you're getting, at this point I felt like the bad guy. Like I felt like I was doing something wrong. Like I shouldn't and I felt like this creature was defending itself from me. And the
They all were.
atmosphere, yeah, like the atmosphere kind of added to that because at this point it's raining, it's dark, the music was hauntingly depressing for this, so like that added to the fight. I like the fact that you had to make your way to him while he was literally shooting at you. It reminded me of playing like fucking old school Call of Duty or watching Saving Private Ryan, where I'm like fucking zigzagging through trenches while the machine guns are blasting at me. So I really liked that. And when you get to him, it's like it felt like I'm scaling the Empire State Building trying to get to this guy. You have to get to his skirt. You have to use the bow and arrow to lure his hands. Kong mentioned kind of like how the fight works, so I don't want to reiterate on that. And then once you killed him, like the way he died was just he just slumped over and died, and I was like that's when I felt like okay, I did something really bad and something really bad is going to happen. And spoiler alert, something bad does happen once you kill all the colossi. So like all that, the ambiance, the the excitement and the tension of running to him while he's shooting at you, and then the sheer massiveness of the colossi scaling him, and then if you fall, you gotta do it all over again. All of that just culminates in my personal favorite colossi. So being fair, on that note, being fair, Hydrus and Avion still edge him out because once you got past his machine guns and his laser beams, it became a climbing fest. While Hydrus and Avion had the air and the water, respectively, adding to their overall mechanics. So that's why Malice doesn't beat them. But Malice definitely is an S tier creature, and still personally, he's my favorite. He's my favorite Colossi. But yeah, needless to say, wrapping it up, I agree. He's definitely a S tier candidate, 100%.
Uh, to add to your point, Gunna, about what you were saying about you doing something wrong, it's kind of funny you say that because based on Malice's animations, when you get to that point, he kind of has like a sense of reluctance. Like, he's not like the other Colossus that are like really hysterically shaking themselves around to get you off. He's kind of like looking at his hands when he see you.
He
He's
felt the most human.
yeah, like he was firing at you when you were far away, but it seems like as you got closer to him, there was like maybe a form based on his animation, there was like some form of sympathy or like empathy for you. Like, am I really gonna kill this little guy? Because he would move his hands up and down, kind of like to look at you and see like, why are you doing this? As opposed to like just flicking it around, like get the hell off of me. He wasn't doing that there. So that was a nice.
Yeah, it felt more human than all the colossi felt. Even the humanoid ones felt like cavemen or the quadrupedal colossi. They felt like beasts or wild animals. This one felt like human. It felt like I was fighting a very big sentient creature, and it was like there's some uncanny valley feeling about that adds to the creepiness factor, which in turn adds to the coolness factor for me. So yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with a lot of the things you guys said. Like Malice does feel otherworldly. Like it felt like he didn't know what the hell you were, and you don't know what the hell he is. It felt
Yeah.
like two worlds colliding, and that moment where you're on his hand and he's looking at you, because of the design of their faces, they do look, humanoid. He just seemed like, what the fuck is this? Like he just looks like really confused, and I don't know about sympathetic, but confusion and like, why are you fighting me? Like that's what I got from hitting, fighting him, and then when you get to his head, and you start stabbing him. The way he flails is like, oh god, what's happening? Like it feels like if you ever see like a video of an animal slowly dying after being hunted down, it's like
Yeah.
they don't know what's going on, but they know that they're dying, and they don't know why. It's really hard to watch, and so you kind of get that feeling in this fight, amongst other fights too, but more so here. I think Malice and Gaius are the most human of the entire roster of Colossi, which is why I like Gaius so much, because he felt like, for him, when you first encounter him, it's almost like he's waiting for you. It's almost like he knows you're coming, and when you get there, he's just like, all right, motherfucker, like you're not gonna kill me. Like it feels like he's fighting for his life, and he knows why you're there. And so with Malice, it's similar but different in the sense that Malice maybe is a little more, maybe sympathetic is the right word, but I get confusion vibes. Like he's like, why are you doing this to me? Like what is the gain here? I'm just here, but I'm not bothering anybody, kind of attitude. So yeah.
The reason why I went the sympathetic route was simply because like he kind of lessened on the attack as you got closer to him. So initially, like he was just chucking fireballs at you, not giving a fuck. He was like, "Yeah, I'm going to take your ass out." But as you got closer and he saw you, it was like, you've come this far. Like, you know, should I really kill you? You're really small compared to me. So it kind of, I don't know, it kind of gave me that kind of vibe.
I could see that. So, there you have it. This is our Shadow of the Colossus tier list as far as the bosses go. I don't know what else you would rank for Shadow of the Colossus. I guess the music. The music is incredible.
Yeah,
Yes.
but that's a lot of the music is good. I would just say the OST itself is
The OST, I don't think it's a hot take, but it might be to some. I think is one of the best game OSTs in history. I think the fucking soundtrack for that is, it can easily be a soundtrack that you can tie to like any epic movie or whatever. Like it's so good, it's amazing.
Yeah.
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 So anyway, that's our tier list. S tier: Avion, Hydrus, Malice. A tier: Felix, Gaius, Pelgia or Pelgia. B tier: Barba, Valus, Argus, Dirge, Bassaron, Quadratus. C tier is Phaedra. D tier is Kuramori. F tier is Snobia and Celosia. You didn't know the names of the Colossi? I just said it all. And you're seeing it on screen because before making this tier list, I sure as hell didn't know. And before we did this episode, these guys didn't know either. We just named them by what they looked like. Turtle Colossi.
They were
Hairy
not in the
Colossi.
manual, so.
They weren't? You sure?
I don't believe so, because that would kind of give away the colossi, if I'm not mistaken. Well, let me not talk like I know, because again, I came late to the game. I didn't have the PS2 version. I ended up playing the PS4 version. So, and in this day and age, they don't come with manuals. So if for any of you guys who actually have the game, hit us up in the comments and let us know if it actually portrayed any of the names for the colossi, or if they gave like a mug shot of them or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it. Dislike if you didn't. Comment, let us know what your favorite colossi were or was or is. do you disagree or agree with our tier list rankings? What should we do next? We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more content. We do podcasts every single week. We publish every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So subscribe so that you're notified when that does go live. We do various episodes on various topics, tier lists, opinion pieces, personal pieces about like our personal gaming experiences or our personal lives. We talk about all sorts of things, and we're also open to suggestions as well. Also, we have different social media outlets as well. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We also run a Discord. We also have a TikTok. All those links will be in the description down below. Mr. Esoteric, he streams on the main channel on Twitch. Check him out on Logical Gamers TV on Twitch. The link is in the description. Give him a follow. He streams 2 to 3 times a week. He streams a variety of games from AAA games to indie games to party games to retro games. He plays everything, so definitely show him some support, give him a follow, and check us out live on Logical Gamers TV on Twitch. With that being said, have a good one. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Till next time.
Take care.